Chelsea controlled everything except the result. This match did not expose weakness in execution. It exposed the fundamental misconception that domination guarantees outcome. What collapsed at Stamford Bridge was not a defensive structure or an attacking plan. What collapsed was the belief system that has sustained Chelsea's recent identity. For weeks, perhaps months, this team has operated under the assumption that territorial superiority, possession metrics, and chance creation directly translate into points. This match provided the counter-evidence. Villa arrived with no intention of contesting control. They surrendered the ball, retreated into compact defensive shapes, and accepted inferiority in every statistical category that modern football analysis celebrates. And they left with 3 points. The problem for Chelsea is not tactical, it is philosophical. Enzo Maresca has built a system designed to suffocate opponents through positional superiority and relentless ball circulation. The structure is sound. The patterns are rehearsed. The players execute with precision. But this approach contains an embedded vulnerability that only reveals itself against opponents willing to abandon ambition entirely. Villa did not come to play football in the traditional sense. They came to survive phases of pressure, absorb attacks without panic, and exploit the psychological fatigue that inevitably arrives when dominance produces nothing. Chelsea's penalty award was not unfortunate. It was symptomatic. When a team creates this much territorial advantage without reward, desperation begins to replace composure. Decisions become rushed. Movements lose their timing. The penalty itself became a moment where the illusion shattered completely. Dominance had manufactured the opportunity, but dominance could not finish what it started. The miss was not a technical failure. It was the physical manifestation of mounting psychological strain. What makes this defeat significant is not the loss of 3 points. It is the exposure of a systematic flaw that opponents will now recognize and replicate. Villa's blueprint was simple: retreat deep, stay compact, refuse to engage in Chelsea's preferred rhythm, and wait for the inevitable cracks. This is not a strategy that requires exceptional talent or tactical sophistication. It requires only discipline and patience. Every mid-table team in this competition now has a manual for how to frustrate Chelsea without attempting to outplay them. The second goal Villa scored was irrelevant to the analysis. By that stage, the match had already been decided psychologically. Chelsea had exhausted their conviction. They had created enough chances to win 3 matches, yet found themselves chasing a deficit. The energy required to maintain their system while also recovering a scoreline proved unsustainable. Maresca's substitutions reflected this reality. They were not tactical adjustments. They were emotional responses to a team that had stopped believing in its own process. This is where Chelsea's current trajectory becomes concerning. Their style demands total commitment to the idea that controlling space and creating chances will always eventually produce goals. But football does not operate on mathematical certainty. Variance exists. Randomness exists. And when a team builds its entire identity around eliminating chaos through structure, it becomes uniquely vulnerable to the chaos it cannot control. Villa did not need to be better. They only needed to survive long enough for Chelsea's frustration to become self-destructive. Maresca will review this match and likely see a team that played well. The passing maps will look excellent. The expected goal figures will favor Chelsea significantly. Every objective metric will suggest his team deserved victory. And that is precisely the danger. If Chelsea interpret this result as bad luck rather than a structural warning, they will walk into the same trap repeatedly. Because the illusion is not that they played poorly. The illusion is that playing well, by their definition, is always enough. The psychological impact of this defeat extends beyond one match. Chelsea's players now carry the knowledge that they can do everything right according to their tactical framework and still lose. That knowledge creates doubt. And doubt, once introduced into a possession-based system that requires absolute confidence in the process, spreads quickly. Players begin to force actions. They attempt to bypass the structure in search of immediate results. The very system that should provide stability begins to feel like a constraint. Villa, meanwhile, discovered something valuable. They learned that they do not need to match Chelsea's quality to beat them. They only need to refuse participation in Chelsea's game. This is a replicable strategy. It does not require world-class defenders or elite midfield athletes. It requires organization, discipline, and the mental fortitude to withstand long periods without the ball. Lower-ranked teams will study this match and recognize opportunity. What this match revealed is that Chelsea's current approach contains a ceiling. Against teams that attempt to play football, to engage in tactical battles for space and possession, Chelsea will likely dominate. But against teams willing to abandon pride, to defend deep and absorb pressure without concern for aesthetics, Chelsea's system offers no guaranteed solution. They can create chances endlessly, but creation and conversion are not the same thing. And when chances go unconverted, the psychological weight compounds with each passing minute. The penalty miss symbolized everything. It was the moment when dominance demanded reward and football refused to comply. The player who stepped up carried the expectation of an entire system on his shoulders, the expectation that doing everything correctly must produce the correct outcome. When the ball did not cross the line, it was not just a missed opportunity. It was the collapse of a promise that the system had made to its players. Maresca's post-match comments, whatever they were, will likely emphasize performance over result. He will point to the chances created, the possession maintained, the territorial advantage secured. And he will not be wrong. But he will also not be addressing the actual problem. The problem is not that Chelsea played poorly. The problem is that their definition of playing well does not account for opponents who refuse to engage on Chelsea's terms. This match was not about individual errors or tactical miscalculations. It was about the exposure of a philosophical assumption. Chelsea have built their identity around the idea that controlling the game means controlling the outcome. Villa proved that control and outcome can exist independently. They controlled nothing and won everything. Chelsea controlled everything and won nothing. The lesson here extends beyond tactics or personnel. It is about the difference between process and result, between deserving victory and achieving it. Chelsea deserved to win by every conventional measure. But football does not distribute points based on what teams deserve. It distributes points based on what teams accomplish in the moments that matter. And in the moments that mattered, Chelsea's belief system failed them. This is not a crisis. Not yet. But it is a warning. Other teams will watch this match and recognize the blueprint. They will arrive at Stamford Bridge with no ambition beyond survival. They will defend deep, stay compact, and wait for Chelsea's frustration to become self-inflicted. And unless Chelsea develop a solution that transcends their current reliance on systemic dominance, they will face this same problem repeatedly. The danger is not that Chelsea will lose every match like this. The danger is that they will lose enough of them to undermine their season while never quite understanding why. Because the problem is invisible in the statistics. It does not appear in passing accuracy or expected goals. It appears only in the final score, which is the one metric that their system cannot manipulate. Villa's victory was not miraculous. It was methodical. They identified Chelsea's core assumption that dominance equals victory and dismantled it through simple refusal. They did not need to be brave or ambitious or creative. They only needed to be patient. And patience, it turns out, is the natural predator of possession-based football that lacks cutting edge in decisive moments. Chelsea will recover from this defeat. They have the quality to bounce back. But they cannot recover from the truth this match revealed unless they acknowledge it. The truth is that their system, for all its sophistication, contains a fundamental flaw. It assumes opponents will always engage. It assumes dominance will always translate. It assumes that doing everything correctly by their own standards guarantees success. Villa proved every assumption wrong. Chelsea did not lose to Aston Villa. They lost to the limits of their own belief system. And that is far more difficult to fix than tactics.